You're listening to the Shipyard Cat Podcast, the unofficial SAFC podcast for fans everywhere.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the pod. We're here today to discuss Saturday's up-and-coming early fixture away down to Bournemouth. Joining me to discuss this, we have Kev. Robin isn't able to join us tonight. He's probably starting his early preparations to pack his bags, get into Bournemouth for that early kick-off on Saturday. Kev, how are we doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. I mean, look, Robin's all right. It's a local game again for him. Sunderland fans have got to set off on Friday afternoon to get to that one.
Exactly, indeed. We never know. Robin might just be setting off early. He might want to be a camping trip up there or something like that. We know what he's like. He likes his journeys out and about in the wild. Come on, then. Let's kick off proceedings straight away. It's Bournemouth. Earlier in the season, obviously, we beat them 3-2 at home after coming down from 2-0 down. We mentioned it in the last pod where this is where the till the end ethos needs to stick around and anything can happen. Obviously, Bournemouth have now had a little bit of a resurgence since then. They've got things in order. I believe they're sitting above us on a couple of points ahead of us. But once again, we've said time and time again, this table this season can change anywhere. We win, we can go back up to, say, I think 7th or 8th position. It's all to play for again, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's such a tight table at the minute. One result, you jump up, however many places. Yeah, it goes the other way and the teams around you win. You very quickly start to tumble a little bit. And yeah, that's where I think our sort of fan base needs to understand that it is a rough part of the season. We are in the thick of it with injuries, but it's one of those where a few more good results will get us over the line and we can enjoy the Premier League again next season. There's more that can be said for certain teams which are, already planning for next season. Wolves and Burnley have, but if you listen to the pundits on Sky, have already been written off.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, at least we're not one of those two teams that are currently kind of condemning themselves to it's kind of over.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and I think that's the thing with us. We obviously Regis and co, so like sort of Kirill and everyone set a precedent at the start of the season by saying they wanted that magic number 40 points, because in the past, I believe, few seasons that have been in the Premier League, the magic number has been 40. So that's why obviously they've worked on saying, right, get to that figure first. We then push on with whatever. Don't get me wrong. I think deep down there is been an aspect of a conversation of that cup run in the FA Cup, but we're not here to obviously talk about the FA Cup this week. That's a couple of weeks' time. But for me, it's get into this game as quick as we can. As you touched on there, injuries. From the presser today, obviously, Nordy's out for 2 to 3 weeks. Who else was it there? Sorry. Help me out here. It's Nordy. Robbie's out for 2 to 3 weeks as well. So obviously 2 key players, but nevertheless, we need to not be disheartened about that because we still have the placements there. That's why we recruit. We get those numbers in. So it's a time for likes of a Mayenda or an Isidore to step up to the plate. Myself personally, I think Mayenda will start over Isidore, just because his sheer raw power, pace, and strength. He is similar to Robbie in that aspect. Just needs to find his shooting boots, bless him. And in regards to Mukiele being out, as long as Serkin's fine, Serkin's already made replacement somewhat in putting back in to the fold. So we've got the options there. Obviously, I'll get your thoughts on that in just a minute. But it's more, we should be happy where we are. We're confident where we are. We're doing well. To me, I don't think we're in a relegation fight at all, in the slightest. And we've proved the doubters wrong from the get-go and still are doing it, that we are still where we are and we're still in the Prem. We're not one of the cannon fodders of the yesteryear where we're getting dropped straight away. We've been, as we've said all time and time again, we've beat likes of Chelsea, we've drew against Arsenal, drew against Liverpool, City. teams that have came up last year, don't get me wrong, no disrespect to those teams that came up last year and then got straight back down, got beaten by these teams.
No, absolutely. I mean, the problem we have is we were spoilt with how well we started the season. So these results that we're having at the moment, because they didn't happen earlier in the season, fans are feeling it now, and I get it. It's that difficult January period everyone says happens, and we're just unfortunately in the thick of it. Some teams, Bournemouth, which obviously we'll talk about in a minute, are on a good run. They've had 6 wins in I think, well, they haven't lost in six.
Mm.
So, this is that time of year where, yeah, key changes happen. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on with the injuries. Obviously, yeah, we know Mukiele is now out for 2 to 4 weeks with a calf issue. Brobbey's out with a groin issue, 2 to 4 weeks. Mundell's got a hamstring issue, could be out for a few weeks, potentially needs surgery, which will probably be part of the reason why he was so heartbroken when he came off of, against Fulham. And then obviously Tarby has got an ankle issue and might now also need surgery. My frustration is those injuries are all as a result of the way Fulham played.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on.
I know you can't blame people, but we've come away with those 4 injuries after a game like Fulham, and nothing's looked at about how the physical element of that game wasn't managed correctly. For 2 players to potentially need surgery,
yeah,
like you don't accidentally hurt your ankle. Hamstrings are hamstrings; they do go, but yeah, it's the fact that 4 players have come out of that very badly battle scarred. Yeah,
I think that's
disappointing.
why. Yeah, I agree with you with what you said about Mundell with the disappointment as well about him coming off. I think what's the bless him. I think the other thing for him as well, it's once again the same leg. I think that's what he's probably thinking of. It's happened again. I've got myself fit. I'm back, and it's happened again. Obviously, nothing that he's done wrong. It's just one of those, the nature of the beast in the game. Really, it happens, doesn't it? And the other way we've got to look at it, as you mentioned there, Tarby. The kid's only been on the pitch for 5 minutes, and he's already been wiped out. And thankfully, the good news is he's young. He'll be able to fight back and hopefully come back a lot stronger. And we'll have him for, I hope, possibly for a little bit towards the end of the season, if possible. The good news is though, Bertrand Traore is back and ready for selection. So myself personally speaking, I don't know what your thoughts are. I would love to have had Robin's thoughts on this. For me, I would love to see a Talby start and a Traore start. I think it could work because obviously we've not heard about Angulo. Yes, he went off hobbling, but by the sounds of it, he's okay, he's fine. But to me, in this instance, against a strong physical squad against Bournemouth, you want some pace, some acute passing, shall we say. Those two, to me, can unlock defences.
Yeah, definitely. They've got to all kind of chip in. Everyone's got to put their thinking caps on for this next few fixtures because, like you say, the likes of Sirkin have got to be considered. Obviously, Ronaldo will be trying to work as hard as he can to get fit again, but he's also another couple of weeks. It's difficult. Obviously, it's great having Xhaka back. For me, he's now a guaranteed starter. So it's then just the kind of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle around them. You got to look at the likes of Siddiqui. He was not in the best of health when he left the pitch the other day, again, because he'd taken a bit of a kick in. So I think that's part of the problem. You've got to look at how many of the players are feeling it.
Yeah.
And that's the disappointment for me, really, is yeah. The depth of our squad was never great. And Fulham have certainly made that a lot worse.
Yeah, indeed. Let's touch on the Bournemouth situation then. As you said there, they're undefeated in 6, so they are on a decent bit of form. And at home, I believe they haven't got a better record than us, but at home at the moment, I think they're holding their own a little bit better than their away record. So they're similar to us, but they've got danger men all over the pitch. We know this. We saw that when they played us. Obviously, they don't no longer have Semenyo, so that's a good bit of reprieve for us, knowing that we haven't got the pace of him running up and down the pitch. We played City now. We're happy. He can sit over there and touch other defenses. But as I said though, their first game after he effectively was sold, they didn't look out of place. But they looked like there was normal service resumed, crack on. What is our main worry going down to the Vitality?
That we underestimate Bournemouth. I think genuinely there's a concern there that because we beat them in our place, there could be that almost naivety. Vitality is a very, very different place to go. Yeah, okay, it's not got the biggest attendance, but as Robin will say, these are tough games to go to. I think, if I'm right in saying, this is also the furthest distance the lads have got to travel for a game.
I think so, yes. I may be
So
wrong. We'd have to get Robin to correct us when he's back.
in my opinion, you've got to factor that into it. You know, these aren't short journeys. But yeah, I think we just take this game as it comes.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, as I touched base on that before, we said at home it finished 3-2, so they have got weapons. You mentioned on the review, it's Jared Gillett in charge. I believe you said that on the other day. We know what he's
Sorry,
like.
fans.
We know what he's. I just want to touch base on it briefly. I'd just get it over and done with, hopefully, and that would be it. We don't need to then talk about him when we do the review. But we know what he's like. He is very heavily reliant on VAR. He is got. You do see him when he does run around the pitch. He has pretty much got his hand to his ear, trying to listen to what's being told to him. So, are we expecting anything different from him? Do we think, or do we think, hopefully, now that he's, shall we say, more matured in the league, shall we say, do we see him being a little bit more lenient, or as in letting the game flow, or do we think it's going to be like we've seen him in the Championship? Stop, start, stop, start, stop, start.
My concern is he spends so much time in the VAR room because he is quite regularly used for VAR. Is he going to be second guessing himself?
Mm.
You know, is the game going to be filled with interruptions and stoppages for I'm not sure kind of moments? Or is he going to absolutely get it spot on?
Mm.
Probably think the first one's the right answer, but yeah, look, I think he sticks in our minds, obviously because of his moment of madness where he sent off Dan Neil for challenging him, shall we say. When then weeks later the same thing happens and the player gets away with it. Yeah, the guy's got to prove that he's able to manage this game.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be an interesting one to see. Let's get some thoughts on our team going forward, and then I'll touch on what you're thinking about in regards to the Bournemouth setup potentially, because obviously, as I touched on before, we know they're going to be physical. They know how to play football, which is a good thing. We found a footballing team, which we sometimes strive well against. We play some better football when another team wants to play like that instead of pretty much wanting to take your legs out before you get the ball, i.e. my old school style football. But let's go on to, as you mentioned there, the injuries have hampered us massively. So leading the line, are we thinking is my end a start, or do we think that'll go to a Wilson and go, right, come on, Wilson, go out, prove yourself, show us what you can do? Or do you think it'll be start with a Mayenda, have 60 minutes, bring on an Isidore?
Honestly, I think it's going to end up being both of them play.
Okay.
I think you'll see Isidore up front, and I think he'll end up using Mayenda on the wings,
Mhm.
and then possibly give them a little bit of freedom to swap, because that gives you that little bit of unpredictability of, is it going to be a lump over the top or a cross in,
Mhm.
or are you going to try and run your way through, which is obviously something that, Mayenda's strength is his physicality. I know he's no Brobby, but yeah, for me, I think, assuming that I don't know what he said about the likes of Angulo and stuff, if they're fit, you probably start Talby and Angulo as your wingers, and then that does leave you the option of which one starts up top. But if there's any doubts about either of them two, then yeah, that puts Mayenda or Wilson onto one of the wings.
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
think you bring Rig into this.
Mhm.
Obviously, we've played with Rig on the wings in the past, but mm, I don't know. I just think if you underestimate this,
Mhm.
it could go wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not expecting miracles down there. I
Mhm.
would take right now. I would take a point, especially after today's press conference with the injuries. But yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? They've obviously got this 6 game unbeaten streak that kind of,
Mhm.
well, it's that whole thing, isn't it? They're there to be beaten. Look at us at home, unbeaten at home. Everyone then wants to take that trophy from you, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. So in your remit, then that means Troy to not come straight in the fold. He'll be on the bench, which possibly I do agree with, because that'll be a good shout, because the fact being he has just came back. Obviously, you don't want to rush him straight back onto the pitch to then effectively get more injured again. So I think he will make possibly I think he will make an appearance off the bench, depending on the dynamic of how the game's going. We both agree Xhaka straight in the fold. That's without a shadow of a doubt. It's then who partners with him. Is it a Siddiqui who's played not every single game of the season so far, or is it a Diarra? Do you rest Siddiqui and say, right, Diarra, come on for similar to what I've just said there, 60, 70 minutes, then bring on a Siddiqui to tire them out even more with his sheer pace, and then at the back, do we keep Train and bring Serkin in, or do we
Yeah, I don't, I
say,
don't, I don't know what the situation is with Sirkin. From what I
yeah, of
understood
course,
from the post-match at Fulham, he was missing from the game due to a knock.
yeah,
So, if you look on the likes of Foot Mob and stuff, he's doubtful.
yeah,
So, if that's the case, that's going to throw you into the back line of Alderete, Ballard, Hume, probably Luke O'Nine comes back in.
yeah,
If Sirkin's out, Reynildo's out, Traore's 50-50, like
yeah.
Mukiele's out, you're kind of, without starting to turn to the unders for defenders.
Could get your friend in, Mr. Jones.
You know what? If he does a job, he does a job. But yeah, I think this
Ex-
might be the game where Luke gets brought into the back line again.
Yeah, definitely. Um, let's talk Bournemouth, and we might as well give them a little bit of time of uh, our patience, because obviously we are playing them. What do we see them bringing to the table, as in regards to danger men? I know we touched on it before, saying they are physical, they are 6 undefeated. What I want to know is, we've seen the vitality this year. And last year they tried to make that effectively their fortress. They did show up against certain teams, like I believe it was a Liverpool and Arsenal, when they were dominating that game, and I think they went on to win the game against an Arsenal. I know things have changed, players have came, players have gone, and Bournemouth is still little old Bournemouth, if that makes sense.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, they've always been a constant kind of mid-table side. They've had a real good run, which has obviously pushed them up to 8th. Obviously, yeah, losing Semenyo, they planned for it.
Mhm.
I think he played 3 games whilst they were still expecting him to be going. Is this his last game? Is this his last game? Is this his last game? And eventually, obviously, he left. But in terms of their danger men, Evan Nielsen,
Yeah.
Krupi, Adley, they're all in amongst the goals. they're a good side. The only reason they lost, you know, the last few games is played Arsenal.
Mm.
They went out in the cup on pens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like they've been playing badly and they've kind of been slapped about a bit. You know,
Yeah.
they beat Liverpool at the Vitality. Obviously, they then beat Wolves, which is, well, they beat Wolves. Um, they beat Everton at the Hill Dickinson. Their draws have come up against, recently Brighton at the Amex, which we can say, well, we did that.
Yeah.
They drew against Villa, who at the time were pushing second and third place a lot.
Yeah.
And then they drew last week against West Ham at the London Stadium
Yeah.
at a time when West Ham have kind of got into this groove. So,
Exactly.
Bournemouth for me are a difficult side for a team that are just mid-table.
Uh-huh.
They're doing pretty well. And like you
Indeed.
said a minute ago, they're not miles ahead. They're on 38 points, we're on 36 points.
Yeah.
But that is the difference. A win takes you to seventh.
Yeah.
A loss can drop you down to 14th. So it's a
Indeed. Yeah.
very, very challenging kind of point at the minute. But yeah, I think Bournemouth, like I say, what can we expect from them? Again, a physical side, and like you say, they like to play football. Obviously, their manager's doing a pretty good job. I think there's a lot of talk of teams looking at him. Hopefully, we can get something out of this.
Definitely. Speaking of getting something to it, then shall we get some predictions under the way? Because I think we've pretty much wrapped everything up tonight, which is really good and nice and sharp. Robin texted his in before. He went for a 2-2 draw. Didn't give much of an explanation, just plain and simple 2-2 draw. What's your thoughts on the game then, Kev? I know you said before you'd take a point. Are you still thinking of that, or are you thinking about possibly a win?
I would love a win, but like I said a minute ago, mate, I would take a point. I would happily have this finish a 1-1 or a 0-0. I know
Yeah.
it's boring for the fans, but right now, I think every single point counts.
Mhm. Indeed. For me, I'm saying just a 1-0. I know I said that last week as well, but for me, I think it's one of those, it's going to be a hard game. And I think if it's like of a Mayenda or in Isidore that gets this goal, it's going to do either them the world of good and the confidence that'll do for them at the minute. Could have seen how down Isidore is, but I've also seen on social media a lot that the amount of training he's putting in outside of club training, he's trying to take on those one shot finishes from close range, outside the box, things like that. So he is putting the effort in. So for those that I have seen on socials that are doubting his ability, or doubting that he still wants to play for the club and he wants out the door. Yes, he's a bit disheartened because he was the number one striker last year, but this is what happens when you get squad rotation. You need to be ready for the big moment. So yeah, I'm going to say 1-0. I don't mind who gets it. I wouldn't mind another Enzo penalty, to be fair. I'll take that. But no, I think that's about it, mate. Have you got anything that I've possibly missed today?
Not that I can think of. It's kind of like you say, it's early kickoff, so set your alarms for 4 o'clock in the morning, and good luck. Well, to
Yeah.
be fair, probably earlier than that if you're heading from the stadium area.
Mhm.
But no, I just think for me, it's just I know I've said this in many, many pods. Just hopefully we come back with something and no injuries, because right now we can't afford any more.
Exactly. So, mate, that's the big thing right now for us. But other than that, what we'll do is we'll wrap it up there. So, cheers, mate, for joining me. I know it's a bit weird when it's just myself and you, or like so when it's you and Robin. But no, cheers, man. It means a lot.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure as always.
Excellent. And a massive thank you to those that listen to us. It is appreciated. I know I did a few bits of tweets there today during the presser, and obviously we got some feedback off that. Really nice to see that people are shedding their thoughts and opinions on it, which is nice to see. So continue to do that on our socials, on the old Twitter, or as people like to call it, X now. Looking at obviously the Facebook, which I hold my hands up. I need to get myself back into shape and getting all that sorted. Kev sorting the TikToks out like crazy all. And then obviously on YouTube. So you're all doing fantabulous. Thank you very much. And as ever, we'll see you on the next one.